Hello there, and welcome back to From Within She Rises. I don't know what this is a podcast of anymore, and I have been on a little bit of a hiatus, and we're going to talk about why. We're going to talk about what that feels like for me, what that looks like for me, and why I am back. So let's do it. Let's drop in first. I want you to close your eyes and just breathe in to the part of you that just needs to sit in stillness. The part of you that maybe you're avoiding. The part that needs to cocoon to come out the other side brand new. And on each exhale, I want you to release all of those barriers that are keeping you from doing just that, from sitting in the stillness, from cocooning in whatever you need to be cocooning in, so that your highest and best self can emerge on the other side. All right, let's come back into the room, wherever you are. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about why it's November 19th as I record this. And I have recorded another one in between here, but I never edited it and I never released it. And I understand why, because I have been in a cocoon, but I really have to talk about it because I've been carrying a lot of weight on my shoulders, and I really wasn't ready to speak about what that really meant until now. And my silence has not been about avoidance. It's about metamorphosis. It's about the fact that I've literally quantum leapt in this year so many times that my head is spinning. And this time, since July, since my last episode, I have truly been in a cocoon. I've been in this metamorphosis for weeks, for months, literally. July, August, September, October, November, that's 4 months of cocooning. It was a lovely cocoon, let me tell you. I have been inside it, and I didn't necessarily choose it. I wasn't actively okay, I'm going to go off and not record anything for a while. No, that's not the choice. It was one thing after another that just led to a disconnection from whatever this podcast was meant to be. And I have found my purpose, if you will, in this space because I've really stepped into the loud, annoying, radical self that I was always meant to be. And I've truly, like I said, I did not ask. It wasn't a conscious cocooning. I don't think it ever is a true spiritual awakening, I think. And I only count this one as one final spiritual awakening where you're dismantling little by little and you're coming out on the other side. And it truly was a dismantling this time around. I thought I was ready. In July, I felt good. I didn't realize how much I still had left to dismantle, and I can only imagine how much I still have left to. But it was a dismantling that I did not necessarily ask for, and descent that really truly has felt like death. And revelation braided together. And you can feel that in my previous episodes where I was in this flow of revelation and coming on here and just monologuing it out to all of you that are willing to listen. And the truth is that when I went into this cocoon, I didn't know how to come back here until my voice had truly changed. And maybe you won't hear the change in my voice necessarily, but you will hear the change in the way I market this because now I'm okay being heard and seen from this radical voice. This space has always been so safe for me to be the radical voice. And it was because I wasn't necessarily putting it out there. And my real quantum shift here has been really putting it out there actively. I was afraid of my Judas moment. That was one really big thing that came up during this cocooning was realizing that I wasn't really fully putting myself out there onto Instagram because I was afraid that the people that I loved wouldn't understand and that they would be my Judas. And that's really what it is. Everyone has that Judas moment. And the moment I realized that I was still going to be held by God when that happened, I released that fear. And literally the next day, the Judas moment came. And I won't get into how it actually manifested physically in this world, but it came. And guess what? I didn't collapse. I didn't crumble. So my voice has changed because it's more I'm holding space for it to be heard. And today, I walked through fire in that changed voice. And I cried a little through that fire too, if we're being honest. I walked through a moment that ignited something like truly ancient in me, and made me really remember who I am as a woman. I am a woman who ends eras. And that is what I feel like. And so are you. And it led me to reigniting the passion of being behind this mic, of just like letting this flow, letting the revelation flow. And so here we are. People truly think that silence can mean weakness, distance, disinterest, but in the feminine mythic cycle, silence is a sign that something is happening underground. Shit's about to go down, if you will. Silence means your bones are literally rearranging. It means your illusions are being burnt off. It means your truth is sharpening from the inside out. Silence is that moment in Book of Revelation, which we all know that I love, where their fire comes down and purifies. We're afraid of this brimstone and fire. And when I read that, I fully knew it was about a purification of the illusions that we cling to. And that's what it's really about. That's what the silence does. That's what the cocooning does. And if you've been with me from the beginning of From Within She Rises, you know this podcast is not something I do. It truly has been something that I become. Every episode has been a disappearance, if you will, a memory, a death and a rebirth, a new layer of truth just coming out through my throat. And the reason why I've been so quiet is because my voice was truly molting, and maybe not molting in the sense that I've always been radical here, but in the sense that I'm ready to be radically heard. And the reason I've been quiet is that I was truly being remade. I was dismantling all these wounds and all these fears that were holding me back from not only speaking on here in that voice, but allowing myself to be heard. I couldn't come on here and bring half-formed words. I couldn't sit, and I tried. Like, I recorded an episode about a month ago, and it was like I went off on a rant because I wanted to like over-explain why I wasn't here, but it didn't matter. And I mean, there were like really physical reasons why I wasn't here at the beginning. Like, my 4-year-old had Lyme disease, but we're not going to get into that. But that's what that episode was. I was like trying to make excuses for the fact that I needed a freaking cocoon. And you know what? That silence and that cocooning is okay. It's okay for me, and it's okay for you. It's where you come out. Like, there's a reason why the caterpillar goes in and hides in this cocoon until it morphs and molts into this beautiful butterfly. And it's okay to do that. Doesn't mean you're coming out of that a physically different thing, but you will energetically come out of that a completely different being. And I did try to bring on those half-formed words. I tried to over-explain. But I couldn't sit behind a mic when what was happening in my life was meant to transform me, not be sitting here narrated. I just would go off on tangents. The feminine does not tell the story while the fire is still burning. And that's what I had to learn. She is supposed to speak from the ashes that form the new ground. And I'm standing on that ground now. I'm standing on my new self, quantum leapt into a different reality. I don't even know. Even the people around me, I can tell, have shifted. It's very crazy to witness, and it's beautiful, which, going back to when I talked about the monastery getting it wrong in some capacity, yes, I've always felt like the monastery got it somewhat right, because you do need to cocoon. But how do we come back out of the cocoon? How do we know when we're ready? How do we know that we've healed enough to come out? But to understand that metamorphosis in that cocoon has a doorway. Mine came in the form of a school board meeting today, a system that, in my opinion, had failed my child. And we won't get crazy into it because I don't want to, he said, she said, but it really opened my eyes to a lot of the corruption that was going on. And I realized from the very beginning, I went into it just like, okay, allow me to be held in this moment. I homeschooled my kids in the interim, and allow me to just like feel. Also another physical reason, because this has been a 2-month situation that isn't fully repaired yet. So we'll leave it at that. But I went into it like, okay, let me be held. Let me homeschool. Let me just let this play out in the most organic way that it's supposed to play out in this system. Me just like being the calm mother as best as I could, supporting my children through this, and just seeing how the system was. And it really made me realize how much the system needs to be dismantled completely and built back up. And again, that's not what this episode is about, but I just want you to understand how it like reignited something in me. I really went into it understanding, which is really crappy, that my kids had to be in this position where they were feeling so isolated and feeling so bullied to the point where I was like fighting for them. And when I first found out about it, I was so wrathful. I had to sit with that and transmute it as I was driving to the school to like rip someone's throat out. And I did not. I'm happy to report I did not do that. And that was in September 19th, exactly 2 months ago. But I went in there and just asked for like, hey, how do we support all of the children? And it's interesting because I think I talked about at some point going to church and a prophet being there, and they singled me out and said, I need to talk to you after. And when I went up there for him to talk to me, and my husband was there too, he said something about me working with kids, and I didn't really get it. I tried to find space in what I was building for kids, but then when I released it, it was like this happened. When I released the expectation of how am I supposed to do this for children, my kids started getting bullied, and I started to see the corruption. And I started realizing that this whole system had to be dismantled. And I started going to education tenure panels to see what the province was going to do for the next 10 years of education. I started speaking out on nervous system regulation. I started speaking out on breath work and all of this, and on creating a system that supports everyone emotionally and physically. But I realized that also it had to be me. Like, this had to happen to my kids. They had to feel so much pain in this situation because I felt like I was the only one that was going to be like, okay, but what about also the bully? You know, because to be honest, let's be completely fair here. The bullies are not going to be fought for by their parents, or they wouldn't be bullying to that extent. And it was an extended thing, and we're not going to get into it. But it truly, being in this place, and this morning having this meeting, that then lit another fire under my butt because I allowed this to play out in the length of time that they would allot it, because I wasn't going to be like, no, you have to do this now. I let it play out organically, and here we are. And this morning was very disheartening, we'll say. Just like the verbiage and everything. And I was just sitting there like, what the heck is going on? But this entire experience woke something up, something archetypal, something that's generational, and something that's ancient. And it finally gave me a purpose to get back behind this mic. And it started with a revelation this morning before I even went, which I didn't connect to the fact that it was a foreshadowing, a prophecy, if you will, of what was about to happen going into this meeting. I felt a rise in me, and it wasn't rage. It's not hysteria. It was like that righteous female ignition that patriarchy is terrified of. The kind of heat that only comes when truth has been ignored for too long. And when you are compliant to it, you are just the same problem, just like I was going to be. You are part of the problem when you ignore the problem. And how do we fix the problem, but with compassion and support? And that's why I also would have been part of the problem if I had gone into that office with rage. And if I said, I want somebody to be punished for this. But I was like, whoa, how do I flip tables and be upset about this, but also say, how do we fix it? How do we fix the root cause? Which, as you know, I have said time and time again, the root cause is dysregulation of your nervous system, which is dependent on co-regulation with the divine. And this isn't about church, guys. It's not about religion. So if you're listening to this, don't snap back at me. It's the kind of heat that rose in me that says this ends with me. I was done. It's like the kind of heat that then steps you into that polarity, and everything always comes with this and that's why I say wrath is like the ignite, because you have a choice, right? In the wrath, you have a choice. Am I going to push back and be pissed and ask for retribution? Or am I going to sit and transmute it with love and be like, how do we fix the problem? Why is this happening in our society? And how do we fix the societal issue? And we all want to put blame on other people, but it starts with us. It starts with me individually. And when I heal that, I can heal others. In that moment this morning, I truly remembered something I'd forgotten about myself, which is that women don't just get angry. We burn illusions to the mother effing ground. Women don't just fight systems, we dismantle them. We don't just advocate, we rebuild. And this is not dramatic, this is archetypal. And I know that doesn't feel good. And I'm not saying that men aren't capable of it, but the feminine, let me rephrase that. The feminine within us is what does this. The feminine that allows herself to feel so deeply that the truth and the corruption snaps her out of her illusion. And she says, hell no, I am breaking the generational trauma loop now. And the thought that dropped into my spirit this morning as I'm standing in the shower, as you know, my favorite place to have a revelation, was no wonder men fear women. And the phrase that came through after that was, no one fears anything more than a woman's scorn, right? And I know that's not how it's phrased, but that's how it came through. And then I started thinking about every myth, every religion, every legend. The one who rips systems down to their bones and rebuilds them, it's always a woman. And it's not to say that it has to be a gender woman. It's always the person who can feel that feminine rage and transmute it. Feel it so deeply that it rips them apart. It rips apart who they thought they were. And in that, they make change for the society. They say, no, I am changing. This feels disgusting in my body. I'm not going to deal with this anymore. Let's think about it. There's Demeter, there's Isis, Hecate, Persephone, Sophia, Eve, Mary Magdalene. And we think of today's women, there's Erin Brockovich, Harriet Tubman, and other mothers and mothers of the movement. Women who walk into corrupted structures and end them. And then I realized this fire in me wasn't personal. It wasn't about a school meeting. It wasn't about incompetence. And again, it wasn't about my child even. It was ancestral. It was mythic. It was this cellular memory waking up. I was remembering this lineage of women who don't negotiate with broken systems. Women who do not play small. Women who do not ask for permission. And women who stand in the doorway of the old world and say, this era ends here. And again, I use woman, but it could be a man. It is the feminine that allows itself to feel so deeply and unravel in that wrath, watching the corruption, that they choose to stop it there. Act compassionately. I feel like in that moment of wrath, you either act not good or you co-regulate with the divine. You bring in your Christed masculine into the equation and you transmute that, and you, in that stillness, in that ability to this expanded feminine emotion, rage, to expand your masculine Christed container, witness, to hold all of that so divinely in that co-regulation that you can actually change the world, that you can actually sit in that stillness and create a way through, dismantle everything and build from new. Out of this random shower revelation, a series truly did come through me so clearly that it felt like it was it felt like I should be taking notes and somebody else was sitting there telling me. It was a full anthology, a mythic, biblical, historical, modern, and cinematic arc, if you will, of the feminine fire that destroys and rebuilds worlds. And this will be my next full arc from Within She Rises. I'm going to be calling it The Woman Who Ends Eras. And each episode I'm going to explore an archetype. Because who doesn't love a good archetype? We're going to talk about mythic goddesses. We're going to talk about biblical Gnostic women. We're going to talk about real world revolutionaries, somatic archetypes that we see playing out in movies, the one that popped through this morning or this afternoon as I was driving back from this meeting, disheartened, but understanding that this was not only about me creating this series for you, but also realizing that, oh, now I have to embody it. The joys of being a 5-1, I tell ya. Yeah. I always have to put my money where my mouth is before anyone else does, and it's actually really annoying. But the one that came through was Jean Grey in X-Men as I was driving home. And the reason why I bring it up now is because it's such a beautiful also example of not the same as cocooning, but of the phoenix, of like of this beautiful bird coming out of the ashes. So yes, I want to bring this series, which is going to be a lot, which is going to be a beautiful dismantling. I want to bring you this series because myth is not just fiction. Myth is a memory. You know, what I've really realized as I've awoken, and I'll do an episode maybe later this week about this. I just did a past life regression, and it's just like ignited so many things in me I can't even imagine. Also, like as I came out of this cocoon into this, I've moved into like very witchy vibes. But it was like so incredible. And as I was listening to this book that I was led to after or before, I can't even remember the sequential order, it was talking about the author of The Lord of the Rings, that there was another book that was printed after it, that his son had printed. And he essentially said it was like a channeling or like a past life kind of channeling that his father had. So essentially the Lord of the Rings was like the remnants of it. So it's interesting because like every myth that's out there has some sort of truth, and it's not that if I can tell you anything, it's that there's no full truth in anything. But if you stop, you know, like think of like the fantasy books that we're reading about fairies or vampires or whatever, and then go and pick up an actual Bible that has like all of like the Book of Enoch and all the other things, an Ethiopian Bible or whatever that has like so many different scriptures that the canon took out because they didn't want you to think for yourself. There's giants in that. There's demons and angels controlling the world in that, and that's not to say that that's like the truth. Because I think you need to like sit with, I think we're never gonna know the truth, you know? But it's also for you to understand that maybe, you know, if those things were in the Bible at some point, dragons and angels and demons and giants, if they were once in the Bible, why are you so hard to dismiss things that aren't even fantasy books? Myths and all of these things have some remnants of truth. And like I said, you're never gonna know the full truth, not until you're on the other side. And then you'll probably pop yourself back out into this life, into a new mission. And as soon as you pop yourself out in here, you're going to forget it anyways. You've probably known the truth. So here's the reality. You have known the truth before. And your subconscious, your higher self that is trying to talk to you, that's trying to send you signs through the body, is trying to get you to remember. And it could be in a book. It could be in a fantasy book that sparks something within you. It could be in the Bible. It could be in a Gnostic text. But when you start to narrow it down and only want it from certain things, you forget everything. So we are going to do this beautiful series. And we're going to remember that myth is memory. And women today are living versions of these patterns. And here's the part that might be a little more personal, for me anyways. And I really came to realize this morning that this series was meant to be on From Within She Rises. I realize that it can't be anywhere else. It's a me ranting, a rageful woman ranting. It's a wrathful woman coming out on the other side as a phoenix or whatever resonates with you, ranting and telling you how powerful you are. And where else would it belong but on a podcast called From Within She Rises? And so I'm back. This is not going to be a shared project. It's not going to be a co-offering. I'm not going to have masculine structure because we're celebrating the feminine. My voice is going to be raw. It's going to be feminine and prophetic and unfiltered and fire-coded because that's what it's supposed to be. I'm not going to be teaching here. This is a monologue that's coming straight from my womb. The womb of co-creation, if you will. This is my remembering. that is being filtered through my gnosis. This is a prophecy. And I really needed to step away long enough to realize that, to hold this, to realize what it was becoming, and to realize that on this podcast, really no collaboration can hold this part of my voice that allows me to go raw and unfiltered. And From Within She Rises, it was never about being a brand. It was not about content. It's always been for me the temple. It's been a threshold. It's been a microphone placed at the mouth of the underworld. It's where I have come to find and release the purest form of my voice. And this is where this series belongs. If you feel like you've been descending, if you've been angry and don't know how to transmute it, or if you've been quiet and you're in your cocoon, if you feel like something in you is just ready to burn the false down to the ground, if you're tired of systems that dismiss you, if you've been mother lioning your life, if you feel like you're becoming someone your past can no longer hold and you're ready to expand to hold it, you are in your own era-ending moment. You are not unhinged. You are not dramatic, and you are not overreacting. You are just remembering your lineage. You are stepping into this archetypal fire. You are becoming the feminine who ends eras. And on that note, if you want to see the feminine that is held and witnessed beautifully by the masculine, Juan and I are starting a podcast called the Mystic Misfits Society Show. And I'm so excited for it because we just witness and hold and mesh so well. Our missions are truly intertwined, and the way that God has like plopped us into each other's laps is like a divine, it's divine flow. It's divine, it's destiny. It's very crazy because I've had revelations around like what I'm supposed to be doing, and he's had revelations around what he's supposed to be doing, and then we talk about them afterwards and they're the same thing, and I'm like, oh, this is so crazy. So if you also want to see the side of me that isn't as raw and prophetic and wild and untamed, if you will, make sure you go there. That will also be a very death and rebirth podcast, and we will be interviewing a lot of people. We just want to hear all of the different spiritual awakenings through all of the different modalities, because it's not just about the Bible, it's about many different things. And I can't wait to talk to all of the spiritual mystics that don't necessarily have any Christian background. So if you want to hear about all of the different ways that you can wake up and die of yourself, come join us on that podcast. But I will be back for more of this. This is my return, and it's not who I was, but this is who I have become inside of the fire, inside of my cocoon. And From Within She Rises is now entering its Phoenix season, if you will. It's Persephone season. It's Eve season. And we're going to walk through myth. We're going to walk through scripture, history, and movies to remember who we've always been. Women who end eras. Women who walk through fire. Women who tell the truth. Women who rebuild the world. So thank you for waiting for me while I became something brand new. Thank you for holding the silence while I descended. And thank you for being here as I rise. Thank you, I love you, and I'll see you in the next spiral.